and we shall open the meeting. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for your attendance at this licensing committee meeting. What I'm going to do to begin with, so that everybody knows who everybody is in the way that we do this at planning committee as well, just go along the top table for the benefit of the two applicants as to explain who everybody is. So, Amelia, would you?
Thank you, Chair. My name's Amelia Bolter and I'm the Democratic Services Officer and Clerk to this committee.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Rosemary Rowe. I'm ward member for Dartmouth and East Dart, and I am vice chair of this committee.
I'm Dan Brown. I'm ward member for Wembury and Brixton, and I'm chairman of the licensing committee.
I'm Naomi Stacey, and I'm the senior licensing officer for South Hams and West Devon councils.
Good morning, everyone. I'm David Fairbairn. I'm head of legal services monitoring officer and the legal advisor to the committee this morning.
Hi, good morning. I'm Karen Proctor, Principal Environmental Health and Licensing Officer for South Hams District Council.
Lovely, thank you. And just to advise everybody that this meeting is being live streamed via YouTube. Okay, thank you very much. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Amelia?
Thank you, Chair. We received apologies for absence from Councillor Kemp, and I'm not sure whether Councillor Pringle will be joining us today.
Okay, all right, thank you. Splendid. So welcome to Mr. Rudd and Mr. Williams, who are the applicants for the application we're considering today. Just as a point of information more than anything else, Councillor Long, who is welcome to attend as ward member, is not a member of the committee and will not be speaking or voting on it, but just for everybody's information. Okay, item number 2 is minutes of the last meeting. Is everybody happy that they are a true and correct record of what happened? Okay, noted. Thank you. Item number 3 is division of the agenda to consider whether the discussion of any item of business is likely to lead to the disclosure of exempt information. I'm not aware of any need to divide the agenda. Item 4 is declarations of interest. In accordance with the Code of Conduct, members are invited to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests, including the nature and extent of such interests they may have in any items to be considered at this meeting. Members, any interest to declare? Jackie?
I don't know if it's relevant, but I chair the Climate Emergency and Ecological Emergency Working Group at Totnes Town Council.
Okay. David?
That's no need to register that, that's fine.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 5, which is consideration of an application to license a vehicle as a Hackney carriage. So I'll just make it clear how we're going to do this so that you're aware. If you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to ask them. This is a slightly unusual application in the way that we haven't, certainly in my time as chair, considered an application for a vehicle. We're usually considering an application for a suitable person or a premises, so it's quite unique in that extent. I intend to be fairly pragmatic about the way that this particular item works. I'm not going to say you've got 3 minutes to make your case and then you can't say anything else afterwards, because I think during the course of the meeting it's pragmatic that members have the opportunity to ask you questions as and when to seek clarity on this. So what will happen will be that Naomi will introduce the report and she will ask if any members have any questions on the context of her reports. After that, we'll hand over to you and you can provide your presentation and then take any questions that members have. Then we will go into debate on it. The members of the committee will debate it. At that point, I will ask you not to interject, because obviously that's something that we will be discussing. But obviously you'll hear what is being said regardless. After that, we will come to a decision on it and we will take a vote on it. In the event that our decision is to refuse it, we will need to obviously provide reasons for that, and at which point, after a vote is taken, I will adjourn the meeting for a few minutes so that the proper form can be filled, so that we know that we are saying the right thing, and so that the decision notice is clear in what it's saying. Is that okay with you two? Understood. Okay, splendid. All right, at which point then I shall hand over to Naomi to present her report. Naomi.
Thank you, Chair. So we're here today to consider an application from Niall Rudd and Spencer Williams of Zest Solcombe Limited to licence a vehicle as a Hackney carriage. The proposed vehicle is a Fairway Electric Shadow Shuttle, and you'll have seen a photograph of this type of vehicle and its specifications at Appendix B of your papers. So the reason we're bringing the vehicle to the committee for consideration rather than making a delegated decision is because it falls outside of our taxi licensing policy by the fact that it's not been rated by Euro NCAP. And as you'll be aware, our policy states that all new vehicles will have a 4 or 5 star Euro NCAP safety rating. So the specification of having Euro NCAP safety rating is considered by the Department of Transport to represent good practice, and it places public safety at the forefront of vehicle specification standards. And the use of Euro NCAP has also been recommended in the 2022 draft Department of Transport best practice. So that's the reason why it's in our policy. However, Euro NCAP itself have, given us information to say that they aren't actually able to test every new car or vehicle that comes onto the market. It's just not popular. So it generally will test the most popular vehicles and the most interesting models is how they define it. Because of this, we have occasionally licensed a vehicle without a Euro NCAP rating, where we have been provided with equivalent and relevant safety information about the vehicle from another reputable source. It's not been possible to obtain exact equivalent information, unfortunately, about this vehicle, although we have received some certification from the vehicle supplier, confirming that the vehicle has been tested and meets certain quality management, electrical safety and environmental requirements, and you'd have seen those certifications in your papers. So while a Euro NCAP safety rating of 4 or 5 stars is desirable to ensure that the vehicle has the most advanced safety features available, it does not mean that vehicles without these ratings are unsafe or illegal. And all our taxis must undergo twice yearly MOT and enhanced vehicle checks. And that will still be the case for this vehicle should you be minded to approve it for licensing. So the vehicle itself isn't your usual style for a taxi. It's an electric shuttle bus. Having spoken with the applicants, they have confirmed that they are used, I believe, at Heathrow Airport and at other sites around the country to move customers around, but don't believe we're aware of any other area that they have been licensed as a taxi. There are 2 ways that the applicants want to use the vehicle. In the day, they want to operate it on a set route around the town of Solcombe like a bus. Passengers will be able to get on board and pay separate fares to be taken wherever they wish to go. And then the applicants would then like the opportunity to hire the vehicle in the evenings for private use. And as the vehicle is constructed to only take a maximum of 8 passengers, this puts it under our jurisdiction as the local authority. They have decided to apply for the vehicle to be a Hackney carriage as opposed to a private hire vehicle, which would give them the flexibility to be flagged down or hired on the spot rather than only taking pre-bookings. So to be able to use this vehicle as both a bus and a taxi, they will also need to obtain a public service vehicle operator licence from the DVSA. And they have a couple of different options available for them, but their first choice would be to licence the vehicle with us as a taxi and then apply to the DVSA for a special restricted PSV operator licence. And that's a special operator licence that allows licensed taxis to then also operate a local bus service. Because under our legislation, a licensed taxi cannot pick up people and charge them separate fares. That's a separate part that requires the DVSA operator licence. If the vehicle was not to be granted a taxi licence, they would have to apply for either a standard or a restricted PSV operator licence for a small vehicle to the DVSA, and they wouldn't have a taxi licence. But that means they'd only be able to use it as a bus with people paying separate fares, and they wouldn't be able to use it to book it for private use as a whole. I've looked at the guidance for the DVSA, and according to that, it says that they do have certain standards that the smaller vehicles will have to adhere to under their standard or restricted operator licence, some of which do differ from our standards. They don't have a requirement that the vehicle has to have a 4 or 5 star Euro NCAP safety rating. So the proposed vehicle is fully electric and wheelchair accessible, both of which are encouraged in our licensing policy and linked to themes in the council's vision. The vehicle has a maximum speed limit of, I think, around 26 miles per hour, and it is proposed it will only be used within the town of Salcombe and the immediate surrounding beaches and area. However, please be aware, once it's licensed, we cannot restrict its use just to a specific area of the South Hams. And if the vehicle was to be licensed as a hackney carriage, it would need to be fitted with a meter in the usual way and have a roof sign. And in terms of rank space, the vehicle is obviously fairly large. There is only, however, one taxi rank space in Salcombe at Clifton Place, and it's about 5 metres long. I believe the vehicle is just under 5 metres according to the specification, so it may fit there. And that would allow, if it was a hackney carriage, to be flagged down, as I've said, or hired on the spot anywhere within the boundary of the South Hams. So I'm sure the applicants will be able to answer more of your questions, but if you have any questions on me.
Okay, thank you, Naomi. Members, questions for the officer. Councillor Hodgson first.
Thank you. In terms of like the model you're talking about, that kind of hybrid model of how it can be a hire vehicle or a taxi, don't we have that model already with Bob the Bus? And I've got another question too.
No, that's okay. So Bob the Bus falls outside of our jurisdiction because it has more than 8 passenger seats. So the DVSA, their operator licence is either for a vehicle of 9 or more passengers, or a smaller vehicle if it's operating as a bus with separate fares. So Bob the Bus would only need its operator licence from the DVSA. It doesn't need a taxi licence as well.
And my other question was, in terms of the certificates that have been sent,
Yes.
there was one I couldn't see a valid until, but 2 of them, they're out of date.
Yes.
So just to flag that up.
Yes, I'm hoping that, I think it's Richard, isn't it? Yeah. He might be able to clarify. He's linking in through Teams and he's with the vehicle supplier. So I have raised that with yourselves, haven't I? So I'm hoping that they will be able to give us some information on that. Thank you.
Guy.
I'm guessing that passenger safety is going to be one of the key things that we'll be debating later. As it's not possible for this at the moment to have an NCAP test, what requirements does the Department of Transport impose on new vehicles? What sort of testing or satisfaction of passenger safety and crashworthiness do vehicles have to have before they're licensed to go on a road?
There is a European certificate that all vehicles must have to be safe to go on the road, and all vehicles must be tested to that standard to be able to do that, and this vehicle will have that European safety certificate. I can't give you the exact details, but that would involve, some testing, crash testing, and certain safety features as well, but it would just be the basic legal level.
That's helpful,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Pete?
I would imagine the case that the vehicle has to have safety belts. Is that the case?
Yes, so our policy is that all passengers must have a 3-point harness,
Right.
seatbelt, and I believe Rich confirmed that they would fit that into this vehicle to ensure that.
It's got 18 months.
Right, and the requirement under hackney carriage regulations would be that passengers would need to wear a seatbelt at all times.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's just for clarification.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Members, any other questions at this point? Again, if any questions are arising from the gentleman's presentation, you're welcome to ask them. But any other questions at this point? Sorry, Joe. Yeah.
Hi. I just wanted to ask you about the speed. The 26 miles an hour. Is it? What would your sort of thoughts be about working sort of outside of Salcombe? I guess I'm just sort of feeling practical that in the middle of the summer, if you were doing longer journeys, whether
Can you make sure you use your microphone, please? So, yeah, thank you. There you go. Lovely. Thank you.
Sorry, we've decided also with Richard, who is the manufacturer, that we're going to restrict ours to probably 20 miles an hour on all sorts of criteria. I mean, Salcombe's High Street alone is only 5 miles an hour restriction because of the amount of people during the high season. And we think it's only fair to be 20 miles an hour or less to ascertain and help us to achieve this business idea of ours. And going forward, hopefully in a year or so, it would be great to have this model working in Salcombe, maybe here, and other coastal towns that need the help of parking just outside of town to prevent more car and carbon footprints in the high streets and more happy people shopping. So that's it.
That sounds good. Can I just come back on that? Yeah, that was part of my next question actually. Because the
Okay,
5
sorry.
miles, yeah, well, about the speed limit in Salcombe. I mean, the 5 miles an hour is like a recommendation, isn't it? Advisory.
Yeah.
But is it 20 miles an hour in sort of the, or is it national
It's
speed
actually
limit
recommended
30?
5 miles an hour from the beginning of the high street up
Yeah.
through to the Salcombe Harbour Hotel, and then thereafter it's back to 30 miles an hour, which is the highway regulation. But we want to restrict ours to a lot less for people to enjoy the ride as well. And the seating positions within the vans gives that extra viewing kind of angle. So we don't want to rush people around.
There's no plans to use that side.
No.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, amazing if it's something that might be expanded. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Dan, then Tom.
Thank you, Chairman. Coming on from Councillor Panel's question, Naomi, can you just help me a little bit to understand the difference between the level of rigorousness between Euro NCAP and the sort of European testing that you say every vehicle will undergo? Because I'm getting, ultimately, the question we're looking at here is around the technicalities of the safety licensing that happens before it comes to this committee, and I'm just trying to get it clear in my head. What are we not seeing by not having the Euro NCAP that we are getting as a result of the standard testing that all vehicles undertake?
So certainly for a 4 or 5 star Euro NCAP rated vehicle, they will have the highest level of safety features such as the braking system, maximum number of airbags, lane assist, cameras fitted for reverse and forward cameras and that kind of thing. So it's really the highest level of technology in terms of safety that you'd get for your 4 or 5 star rated vehicles. The crash testing as well is obviously a part and parcel of that, but even on a lower level rated vehicle, they would have to be crash tested to get like a European certificate to be on the roads. And this is obviously quite a recent vehicle. It's quite a new, I don't know how old that specific
because the vehicle is being tailored specifically for the job in hand. Any additions that need to be made can be made.
Yeah.
So it obviously comes with a basic off-the-shelf level of certification, but anything thereafter can be added on.
Yeah, so it would be those extra safety features that you get on your more modern, higher level vehicles. Yeah.
So are we saying then effectively that if we needed to, we could condition the addition of any such features as a part of this process?
Yes.
Lovely, thank you. Tom?
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, just a small point. With the vehicle being so slow and going outside of the built-up area, presumably it will have a permanent orange flashing light, similar to that on farm vehicles and such.
In an ideal world, it would be lovely to scoot around at 30 miles an hour on Salcombe, but that's just simply not achievable during the busy times. The reason we want to restrict the speed is A, because it's necessary, especially through the high street and around the busy beach areas. And realistically, most vehicles aren't going to go up the steep gradients at any more than 20-25 miles an hour anyway. Because we're not going to be using it outside of the 3.3 mile radius that we've got planned, there's no need for us to sort of, I mean, obviously if it was going between Salcombe and Kingsbridge, for example, then 22-23 miles an hour wouldn't necessarily be safe, but that isn't the plan for the moment.
I mean, my thoughts are that obviously if it's on the open road at that speed, there is a risk of a rear end shunt with anyone else going faster.
In terms of the planned route, now I do understand what you're saying, but the planned route would be from the top of town through, down Onslow Road, and you're not going to be racing down there anyway, and the idea is we're trying to discourage car use within Salcombe anyway. Through the high street, you're not going to go any more than 10, 12, 15 miles an hour anyway. So the only open road area you'd be looking at would be Cliff Road between Salcombe and North Sands, which is a small, fairly pedestrianised road anyway. We'd be using that road to go back then up Newton Road then down Devon Road. So all these roads really aren't roads that you're going to be able to do any more than that on anyway. So.
Okay, thank you. Pete?
I'm just sort of following that on Google Maps. So, I mean, quite a popular feature of Salcombe is Overbecks, which is obviously, you know, a fairway, you know, outside of the main centre. I mean, I can imagine, you know, in holiday time that you're going to get people who are going to, you know, want to go there. I mean, are you going to be able to offer that?
Overbecks have actually contacted us directly. The challenge we've got is that we want to be able to offer the service, the buses twice an hour. So each bus twice an hour. If we do Overbecks, that could potentially add an extra 30, 40 minutes onto the journey, because I'm not sure whether you're familiar with the potential congestion. You are. We did, when we had the trial vehicle, we took it up to Overbecks. That's when they saw it and they were all over it. But I think for us to do that, we have proposed to Overbecks that we have a dedicated vehicle specifically for them.
If I might, whilst we're asking questions, it states. I mean, we've seen a picture of it, and it states. I think you've said, you know, they're you know, in use at Heathrow and, you know, airports, and you know, which you can absolutely see. Are you sure that when it's fully laden, that it will cope with the sort of great, you know, I don't want to be derogatory, etc. But I mean, if when it's fully laden, you know, and it drops down to 5 miles an hour or something, you know, people are going to get a bit cheesed off if they've got to follow. That's the essence of the question. Are you sure that it will cope with the gradients?
The trial vehicle that we actually had 5 passengers in the back on a 7 kilowatt battery, and even the driver was astounded by the fact that it could actually meet the gradients. I'm not sure. I think the battery that we're getting is 15 kilowatt. We've spec'd it up. It won't even phase it at all. So.
Okay, at this point, I'm just going to draw this not to a close, but I would like for the applicants to give their presentation so that if there's any questions after that, they can do it. But hopefully that will clear up any, provide clarity or anything that's needed. Is that okay? Happy to give the presentation? Lovely.
So it's just a 3-4 minute presentation.
That's fine.
Just giving you a brief synopsis of what we're looking to do.
Do a terrific job, Steve. So whilst they're sorting that out, I'm just going to ask Naomi to clarify what the applicants can do without a licence with this vehicle anyway, should they wish.
Okay, so without a taxi licence, the element that they wouldn't be able to do is hire the vehicle as a whole for private use. So if a family or a couple wanted to be taken from Salcombe Harbour Hotel into the town, they wouldn't be able to book that vehicle to do that. They'd only be able to get on the bus as part of its set bus route. However, you guys would still need to get your restricted operator licence from the DVSA to be able to do the bus element. So that's just to confirm. So this part is really just to allow the hire of the vehicle as a whole as a private use.
Please do go ahead.
That's that. With my 2 daughters being, well, one of them head of the school at Salcombe Primary School, and the other one the counsellor, they pretty much run the school. But the headmaster has approached me and wants us to be involved with school trips to the beaches, to do various plastic clean-up and days out and things like that.
So that would also be covered by the taxi licence side of it. Yeah.
Cliff House has approached us for weddings, to take bridesmaids and guests and all sorts at slow speed through the town.
I think the important thing for the committee to understand is the decision it's being made, the decision that is being asked of it, as opposed to the activities that we are here to permit or otherwise. Because obviously it's clear that this vehicle is able to go about certain activities without our authorization to do so, as it's not within the licensing policy area. But to be clear on what we are here to decide upon.
That's correct. So it could be potentially on the streets of Salcombe, transporting people
Yes.
up the hills on the bus route without our say so.
Yeah,
for sure.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, how are we doing with the? Yes.
So from what the operators are saying, they're talking about, it sounds a very regular service, which, you know, I mean, I've emailed you about it, but there's there's a very close crossover between a bus and a taxi, isn't there? I mean, if it's providing a service going around, and picking up people at regular spots, etc., that sounds more like a bus than a taxi. But I guess if they want to step outside of that, then they need the taxi authorization.
That's exactly correct. That's exactly correct. It's the element of people being able to come on board as separate individuals, paying separate fares. That's how, as a smaller vehicle, they would be restricted to only being able to do that with the DVSA operator license. And with a taxi, you can't do that. So it's just those two elements that if they want to do both, they have to have that authorization from both. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, the Teams isn't picking up whether it's too big.
Right.
What about there's a cable. There's an HDMI cable, I think.
Can we provide a cable for the presentation?
But you'll have to come round to here.
Okay. Bear with us for a second.
Bring back typewriters, that's what
I say pen and paper.
Overhead projector. Right. Just tried to load it up by the looks of things. Can it be? Every member here has a device in front of them.
Yeah.
I'm just going to see if this would be in order, but if it were to be shared around, or does do the public need to be able to see it? Okay. Right.
Why not just put it on the table there and we all stand?
The public can't say it's a public meeting. Are you able to talk us? Is there any?
There's a commentary on there which is quite interesting.
Sort of gives us all sort of
the breakdown of Salcombe and history and where the tourism has gone, etc. in the past 50 years.
Jim, can I suggest we adjourn for?
Yeah, okay. I'm going to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes to allow for us to resolve this one way or the other. Thank you. So whoever's streaming it, can the streaming be suspended, please? Okay.
Come on, it's live.
There.
You're coming out with them.
I'm reverberating out of somewhere. I hate the sound of my own voice, as hard as that may be to believe. Yeah. Okay. I think the most important thing that we're here to consider is technicalities, isn't it? So I think that I want to take the committee steer on this, and I appreciate that there's a bit of difficulty with loading the video, but the information that we require in order to make a decision one way or the other is primarily that of safety and technical elements, as opposed to, whilst I appreciate a nice video of Solcombe explaining it, that's sort of by the by. So what I think is important is technical questions relating to the specifics of this vehicle that the applicants can answer in order to inform how we make a decision on this. So how does the committee wish to pursue that? I'd like to move it on, to be honest. Could you put that on mute or turn the mic off or something like that?
Can I just ask a question? We've got Councillor Long here, who's a ward member. Is he able to give us his views as a resident of Solcombe, or? All right, I can see. Right, I can see a head shaking over there. So
he, unlike DM members at this committee, ward members do not have an automatic right to speak. So, and Councillor Long has confirmed at the beginning of this meeting to me he's here to sort of listen out of interest as opposed to necessarily speak. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So, in answer to your question, no. Councillor Thomas.
Chairman, I think what you've suggested is eminently sensible. I think members should have the opportunity to ask technical questions. I've already alluded to the possibility of condition setting if the committee were predisposed to look favourably on the application. I think rather than, when all's said and done, those of us who know the South Hams, know Solcombe, know its unique challenges, I think it's a great way of continuing.
Okay. In that case, what I'd ask you, so if the applicants wish to resume their seats, or one at least, so that you're able to take questions from members. I appreciate you've already asked a few, and I'm sorry for the technical difficulties you're having, but this needs to sort of move on somehow or another. And I think that we're here to consider the detail of the specifics of the vehicle as opposed to whereabouts you'll be travelling necessarily. So, Councillor Thomas, you have a question for the applicants?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So my question is...
Can I pause you for 1 second? Sorry, Dan.
Sorry, Chairman. I was going to say what it might be appropriate is for the applicants to make a short presentation about the vehicle and the technicalities, and then members can ask the questions.
If you wish to do that, you'd be very welcome to. I realise you don't have a video to accompany it, I appreciate it, but you're very welcome to speak. You turn your mic on, but yeah.
No, that's fine. The vehicle is it's originally built as an 11-seater passenger assistance vehicle, but we are we're taking the rear 3 seats of the vehicle out and to allow for rear luggage and so forth. The side entry to the vehicle is wheelchair accessible, maximum of 8 seats. As I say, they're used in a number of locations up and down the country. Obviously, they're the main vehicle for passenger shuttle around Heathrow. They're used at the Royal Horticultural Society. They're used up in Manchester. They're used at Doncaster for a number of things. They're used in a lot of environments where passengers need to be shuttled from place to place. I think they're looking at doing a deal for Manchester Airport. They're quite busy on that at the moment. The technical specifications, I mean, obviously you've got what you've been given. The good thing about these vehicles is that we can actually tailor it to whatever is required. So obviously one thing I think that came up when we did the original demo was anchor points for the wheelchairs. Now they don't come as standard, but obviously that's something that we're going to make sure is fitted in. So whatever the technical specification, because I think your point was very valid. You've got your NCAP rating and you've got your CE rating. Well, what does the CE rating have that the NCAP doesn't, and vice versa? So I think because this isn't a boxed in vanilla application, we do understand fully that it's going to require a little bit of thought process. But going back to what Naomi was saying about the Department of Transport guidelines and so forth, they do also say that they do welcome council to look at being flexible, especially when it comes to decarbonisation. And that, that's our main route on this, is to try and discourage people from using their cars within Salcombe. And because at the moment, the only way to get from Salcombe to the beach is to either walk or drive, but we don't seem to consider the fact that an awful lot of people aren't able to do that journey. So, but technically, as I say, the vehicle can be built to whatever whatever Southampton District Council feel comfortable in terms of the specification.
Okay, so I think to make it clear, because there's been several mentions of airport style buses and vehicles here. We need to make it clear that, because if I think of an airport style vehicle, I'm thinking of the big bus that takes you from the terminal to the to the aircraft, and that's not what this is. It is much smaller. It's not a big 15-meter vehicle. It's a great deal smaller than that. And so for the benefit of anybody who happens to watching online, there's photos which the committee has, which has been circulated as part of the agenda. So it is a publicly available document, which gives a guide as to the look and feel of this vehicle. Okay, so thank you. Any other questions at this point, Pete?
Yeah, two. I think you mentioned possibly two vehicles. Was that right?
Yes.
So you'll have two. Okay.
To the best of my knowledge, and Naomi, you can also confirm this. I think to get a restricted PSV license, you have to have a minimum of two vehicles, and you can't allow those vehicles to be used for anything other than the purposes for which that you've made that application.
Okay.
Now, I'm not too sure whether that's the same for special restricted PSV, but I'm only going off what the OTC have told me.
Okay. Yeah, and
No, I don't believe there's any. Sorry.
No.
Do you want to continue? There's no limit on numbers of vehicles for the special restricted operator license, and I read it as a maximum of two for the restricted operator license, not a minimum of two for the restricted operator license.
So can I mention something? The reason for two, obviously, the amount of people in the summer, well, from April to the end of September. The idea is to actually use only one through the winter months. So we've got one free for another town that might want to try basis, and then bring that one back at the beginning of April again. That's the idea.
Yeah. And yeah.
Okay, it's Councillor Smurd and
yeah,
then
if I
Councillor
can. So obviously, we're here as a committee to, drill down into this, which means we've got to ask reasonably sort of searching questions. So effectively, I mean, what experience have you guys got of, operating either a bus or a taxi service? Because, this needs to be, I'm not suggesting it is, but what you're talking about offering needs to be a well thought out professional service. So some idea of your backgrounds and the thinking that's gone into it would be helpful, I think.
Well, neither of us have got any experience in running a passenger transport service before, but both of us have got local and outside of Salcombe experience in running businesses ourselves. So I currently run a business within Salcombe. I ran businesses before I came to Salcombe. We are aware that we can't do this on our own. So, for example, I've got a brunch meeting in the morning with the director of another local bus service, who's very, very keen to give assistance and guidance where necessary. And I think one of the reasons that we were wanting to come through the council is that if we did go through VOSA or DVSA, then we would have to effectively pretend that we're a bigger organisation than we are, and have a transport officer, and who would then need to share information back to the traffic commissioner and so forth. But we're not that. All we are is a little shuttle service providing a visitor assistance within Salcombe and trying to discourage people from using their vehicles. But with that in mind, we are hugely aware that, and the most important thing for both us and for Richard up at Fairway is the safety aspect. And we know that if we can get that right, then we can potentially use this model to other places that require such a service.
Okay, Councillor Rowe.
Yes, I think a point that's not been touched on yet is joining and leaving. Will there be set points to get on and off, or is it going to be a hop on, hop off, or what kind of service will it be?
I spoke with, I believe it was Nick Turner, but you might be able to, I might have got that name wrong, at Devon County Council. And the process, as far as we know, is that if we do get a licensing approval, then we apply through Devon County Council to get the routes ratified. That process takes approximately 70 days, I believe. And in conversation with him, he said there are two ways you can do it. You can either do just a hop on, hop off, but that would be more what you would use your Hackney carriage licence for. The actual restricted route that we're doing, we're looking to have 4 separate stops for people to know that they can get the bus on and off.
So presumably there might be a bell within the bus, taxi, call it whichever you like, that people can ring when they want to get off.
I guess so. I mean, as I say, because we're only going to be running it within Salcombe, we're quite restricted in where we can go. So, I mean, if somebody does want to ring a bell to say, can you leave me halfway up the hill rather than at the top of the hill? I mean, I guess if it's safe to do so, then you would do so. But the reasoning behind it is not to offer just a plain hop on, hop off service. It would be a ratified route.
Okay, Councillor Thomas, then Councillor O'Callaghan.
Thank you, Chairman. So my question was around then, which I'd alluded to earlier on. Listening to the comments about the speed the vehicle will be travelling at, from a safety point of view, I suppose therefore it's more likely that we're looking at the safety of passengers if the vehicle is hit by other vehicles. And to that end, can you talk to me around what the situation is with airbags? Because I think that is, the officer made the point that if I'm sitting, looking at the picture now in the second or third seat behind the driver's side, and you get a side shunt into the vehicle, what protection is offered that hasn't been flagged up?
Well, I'm actually not too sure, but I do know that for example, on 23-seater buses and on 16-seater buses, there's no requirement to have side airbags. These vehicles will come with a driver's airbag, but
Side impact bars.
and side impact bars. But as we stated earlier, because it's being tailored, it can be bespoke to whatever it needs to be.
I mean, I would bow to the officers as to whether or not that is reasonable or necessary based on the point you've just made. But it's just something I wanted to consider, and I wanted to make the point very much that we're more interested in passenger safety from something hitting the vehicle, I would imagine, rather than the other way around.
Councillor O'Callaghan.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just going to ask about driving the vehicle and what sort of qualifications the driver would need to have to actually drive a vehicle like this.
All drivers will need an EV licence, electric vehicle licence. So they'll need to do a course. We've also got a team of EV engineers local to here in Plymouth who will inspect any technical issues, engineering issues on the vehicles themselves as and when is required, because that's paramount, especially if they're having 2 MOTs, etc. per year. And we will be having a rotation of 4 drivers per day on each vehicle, so 8 in total we need to qualify.
Okay, it's not equivalent to commercial bus, ordinary bus driver license. Obviously, it's an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
But
you can drive any electric car.
Yeah.
But as soon as you're going beyond and paying customers, you need a special license.
Yeah.
So in addition to that, once a vehicle is licensed, it will only be able to be driven by a licensed taxi driver. So they will have had to do the driving test, local knowledge test, medical assessment, and DBS check that we do on all our taxi drivers as well. And every person driving that vehicle would have to be licensed by us.
sorry to interrupt, but in effect, we're actually, I know Salcomb's had a problem with staffing and employees and what have you over during the season, but we're actually offering a proper job to somebody who wants to qualify themselves, for a period every year, for however long this business lasts for. So it's not just the case of grabbing somebody off the street to drive. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Councillor Panel.
Yes, on the issue of the structural integrity of the bus, should we want to think about any possible modifications? Do the officers feel they have the expertise or have access to the expertise that would be needed to assess and make any specification for such modifications? Or do they feel that the bus is adequate as it is?
I suspect that's probably not quite for. Well, I'll hand it over either.
Chairman, I think the issue is not so much that we're specifying what the vehicle should have. I think that's necessarily the function of the licensing authority. I think the issue you've got here is you've got a vehicle that has a European certificate, but doesn't have an NCAP rating. So the issue for you, I think, as members, is in terms of the European certificate, that means that it is safe to drive, safe to be on the roads. The question for you is, because of the policy that you've adopted, whereby all new vehicles will have an NCAP rating, or should have an NCAP rating, is whether a vehicle without the NCAP rating but has a European certificate is still unsafe. And that ultimately, I think, is a question for you to decide.
Yeah, I think we need to be conscious of that. That it is a safety element, and it is down to our decision, really. Councillor Sweet.
Hi, thank you. Would you have like child safety seats, child seat belts in it?
Isofix locks, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Because I mean, obviously, with the nature of the service that we're providing, children and small families are going to be.
But I don't think you have, as a taxi, you don't have to have a child seat, do you?
You don't, no. There's an exemption that a child can sit on a lap.
And the other thing, I don't know whether that's in conflict with what David's just explained, but would like the clearance, like the height of the chassis, be slightly higher than that of an airport shuttle? Because airports are pretty flat, aren't they? And nothing, not a fleck on the ground.
To
Whereas
the best of my knowledge, the height of the vehicle is as per the shuttles that are used around Heathrow.
okay,
And you've got to understand that the shuttles that were built for Heathrow did require some modifications in order to tick Heathrow's boxes, because obviously they're ferrying hundreds and hundreds of customers every day.
okay, yeah, sure.
But the height thing, I mean, the vehicles that we tested, as far as I know, was it 190? I think the specifications should be on the paperwork that you've got. But
I was just
we're
thinking that, and
fortunate in
the height
Salcombe
and
that
the sort of suspension, whether
sure,
it was
yeah, we're lucky that we don't have a lot of sleeping policemen or speed bumps in Salcombe. So if that's a concern, then no, we haven't a day, because we've driven around the routes and there's adequate clearance.
To add to the height issue, we did have the councillor and the mayor of Salcombe just before Christmas have a ride in one of those, and one of the comments that the mayor said that she, for the first time, had driven past the ferry inn, where the wall gets quite high, where the Cliff House is on the other side and the Salcombe Harbour Hotel is on the left. First time she's been in a car, she's seen over the hill. She's seen over the actual wall. So the seating position is quite high up for new people, any age, or for toddlers to actually enjoy the view whilst they're being transported.
I guess I meant more so it wasn't going to tip. The chassis wasn't going to tip over
Oh,
if
right,
it hit, and if there was any unevenness to the ground. Whether it was something that's in place in the highway, like a sleeping policeman, or I don't know, if something else, debris or something unexpected is in the road, that it's actually going to have, suspension, which is going to be sufficient.
The vehicles are currently used in quite challenging environments. So when we our initial concerns, and it's taken us a long time to actually try and identify a vehicle that will do the job, because unfortunately in the UK we're a little bit behind other countries when it comes to providing electric
Yes,
vehicles
we've
for
heard.
passenger transport. For individual transport we're doing quite well, but for passenger transport we're quite behind the look. And our biggest concern was our gradients, and the fact that we've got some gradients up to 25%, and what impact was that going to have on balance and all the rest of it. And when we approached Fairway, they were like, no, that's just not an issue at all, because they're all specifically designed
Okay,
for this and this.
right. I'd like to draw this element to the next stage now, if I may, because obviously this is something which we need to debate and potentially come to a conclusion on. So, members, I think there's three possible decisions that we arrive at today. The first is to approve this application with conditions should members wish to do so. The second is to refuse this application and provide a few reasons as to why we are doing that. Or the third is that we don't feel that enough information is available at this time to do so. So I'd like to move into a debate, if I may, if everybody feels like enough questions have been asked of the applicant. Mr. Fairburn.
I was going to say, as the applicants, do you feel that you have you said everything that you would like to say? I'm thinking particularly in terms of explaining to the committee the fact that the vehicle has a European certificate and what that actually means in practice in terms of the vehicle itself, the vehicle construction, the tests it might have been through. I know you keep on saying that things can be modified, but I think it's making sure that the committee can understand what a European certificate means and what NCAP also means, and what the difference with this vehicle is.
In order for the vehicle to actually get registered with the DVLA, it has to be crash tested. It has to show certain certification. Sorry, in order for the vehicle to be registered with the DVLA and licensed, it has to go through all the necessary crash tests and so forth. For us, without the safety aspect being paramount, we don't have a business. We need this to happen purely because it doesn't really happen, and the reason it doesn't happen is because a lot of councils, not just Southampton, a lot of councils have got a very vanilla boxed-in approach to what's on the drop-down menu, if you like. So with this, we can tailor it to whatever the safety requirements need to be, even though the off-the-shelf ones are good. We understand because of what it's being used for, it needs to be tailored and bespoke to whatever those requirements are.
Okay. So are you satisfied that you've been able to convey the information that you feel you need us to?
Sorry, just one other thing. Many moons ago, in 1986, I went skiing with my dad, and we went to a place called Zermatt in Switzerland, and they now have 500 electric vans ferrying people around. There is no diesel, there are no petrol cars. They've been doing this now for 40 odd years. We actually went to visit the manufacturing plant last February.
That's not what he's asking.
No, but for experience of why we're here, we're quite passionate about this.
But in terms of, have we been able to give you all the information that we are, apart from having had the benefit of you sitting in the vehicle and having a go in it today, and unfortunately the weather's got against us for that, and the video, we would prefer to be in a position where we could share that video with you at some point after the meeting. But in terms of answering the questions, I think we've...
Okay, all right, thank you. In which, go on, Pete.
Quick, I mean, it's just a box ticking. I'm not sure whether, but presumably Salcombe Town Council are are happy about what you're doing.
We've spoken with Salcombe Town Council. Obviously, their role's fairly restricted in terms of what they can do and what they can approve, but certainly, yeah, they're happy with it. Yeah.
Helen.
I just wonder about insurance. Are they, has it been a good vehicle to insure, or?
Each vehicle costs, for an 8-seater, £3,500 a year for to cover public liability, any injuries, accidents. All the drivers, but all the drivers have to be EV certificated and the right EV licenses. So hence not dragging in anyone off the street to drive for a summer job. It's 4 drivers per vehicle per day for the length of time that we need it for.
Because the vehicle and the certain type of certificates that it has, that hasn't been a problem with insuring it?
No.
No, okay.
The actual company we're using have been recommended by Fairways, who are the manufacturer of the van that we're purchasing, hopefully. And those ones are used in Heathrow with quite a hefty insurance indemnity policy over them because of, don't want to bump into an aeroplane, for example.
Right. I understand a video is working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this element of the meeting to a close. I'll thank the applicants for everything they've said. What is it, about a 3-minute video?
Yes. Yeah,
okay, we'll watch the 3-minute video, and then after that we shall go into the debate on this, and we'll debate it and come to a decision. So if the Rosie, if you want to stream it if possible. Okay. That's promising.
It might just be from my laptop, unfortunately.
Its temperate climate, coastal proximity, and stunning beaches draw tens of thousands of visitors every year. During peak holiday season, Salcombe can swell from a resident winter population of approximately 1,800 to over 25,000. This does not even include day visitors. Unfortunately, there are very few parking options in town. Even in winter months, finding a space in town can be a challenge. Salcombe Town is just under a mile from one of its main attractions, North Sands Beach. The crystal clear waters, safe swimming and golden sand attract families in their thousands every summer. But how do they get there? They have 2 choices, drive or walk. The single council car park cannot cope with the volume. Access to North Sands for many is through town, so during peak times congestion is common, with fumes hanging in the air of the narrow Fore Street. And also, for full-time residents of Salcombe, there is poor connection between the most populated residential areas and town, where businesses and hospitality are based. In the evenings, there is no scheduled bus service, so it's walk or drive. The 25% gradient puts many off. It doesn't have to be like this. Zest is proposing to provide 2 8-seater electric passenger shuttles to ferry passengers on a round-robin route through Salcombe, with a view to offer private hire in the evenings. Both vehicles will have wheelchair access, plenty of storage for extra bags and pushchairs, and of course, they will both be dog-friendly. Our service is planned to be available all year. We will likely only run 1 vehicle during the very quiet months, but Salcombe is especially quiet from November to February for a reason. Many locals living in outlying districts simply don't visit Salcombe anymore. Parking is too difficult, and there's no transport service from out-of-town parking into Salcombe. Our local businesses are suffering. Many closed entirely as there are no customers. Day visitors are often overlooked, with an assumption that tourists are either second homeowners or renting. Salcombe is high on the must-visit list for many visitors in both Devon and Cornwall. We do not wish to welcome them by having nowhere to park and no way of getting around. A day visitor cannot see all of the sights in 6 or 7 hours on foot, especially if you have mobility problems, children, extra bags, pushchairs, and also fancy some retail therapy on the way. If we assume that the average petrol or diesel vehicle visiting Salcombe drives approximately 50 miles per week, times by, say, 200 vehicles a week. That equates to approximately 1.5 tonnes of carbon each week. 12 tonnes every 8 weeks. Zest shuttles will cover approximately 12,000 miles each year, offsetting approximately 10 tonnes of CO2.
Okay. Are they into it? Great. Thank you very much. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. Dreadful choice of music.
Yes.
Encourage people to park out of town. I was a school teacher at Salcombe Primary for a couple of years, not very long ago, so I know the area very well. I know particularly the area around Onslow Road and the school and the swimming pool. Are you suggesting that you'd be encouraging people to park in the residential estates up there and then get on the bus and go down to town?
Use the car park or on top.
Okay, I'm just asking because it said, I'm concerned slightly.
Since moving there over 5 years.
Can you put your mic on, please?
Sorry, since moving to Salcombe, but having come here as a kid every year since '84, but more recently, while chatting with Niall about this business, we've noticed more and more over 60s, 70s struggling while they're on holiday, walking up and down the hill and not really enjoying actually being in Salcombe.
No, I'm not disputing that, but what I just want to make clear is where it said there, encouraging out-of-town parking. I just wanted to get an exact handle on where you were suggesting.
Right, opposite where the petrol station is, there's a car park opposite, which can house up to 400 to 500 cars. Yeah.
And that would be where you'd be doing a pickup.
It's a council car park.
Yeah, you'd be doing a pickup.
During Regatta Week last August, in the middle of Regatta Week, the Park and Ride car park was only half full. And
the highest
because people are trying to get into town to park.
Okay, right. So we're into the debate then, and I want to be clear that I would like members to keep their points to the matter that we are here to consider, and not matters that we are not here to consider that is not the responsibility of this authority, if you may, in your comments. So, Councillor Pannell.
Yes, just a question actually to the applicants. We heard earlier that it may not be necessary under European regulations for the vehicle to have a reversing camera and or sorry, it does. Thank you. That's one question. And does it have any audible warning? That's excellent. Thank you very much.
I'll bring Naomi in here.
Unfortunately, I haven't had a certain information such as that provided. I wondered if you had like a list of the extra features that you could give to the committee, because without that, that's quite an important consideration. So.
I do have a list given to me from VOSA, and ticked off everything that they have. So basically, VOSA.
Can you use your microphone, please?
I beg your pardon. VOSA gave us a list of stuff that needs to be checked and needs to be tested, and our list actually exceeds the list that VOSA gave us. But if you can give me a couple of minutes, I can get that list up.
So that's the list we've got in Appendix C.
I think it is, yes.
That was sent through from the supplier. There wasn't really an explanation supplied with that kind of table, which would have just maybe given us a bit of guidance on what that means. And we were hoping that perhaps either yourselves or he would have been able to expand on that further, which is obviously the technicalities of the vehicle that we were looking at. So if you're able to confirm what your vehicle has in addition to the basic level, I think that would be helpful.
Well, it's got the forward and rear cameras, and the forward and rear beepers, which I don't think are necessary, but we believe that they are. It's got the wheelchair anchor points, which again, I'm not sure whether they were actually on the list. I don't think they were, but because it is a WAV, a wheelchair access vehicle, it does have those. It's
Passenger
got
doors are on the pavement side.
passenger doors are on the pavement side. That's right. It's got that ladder thing on the back, but that's purely for access to the roof. It's got reinforced. I mean, obviously the chassis has been reinforced, but again, that's not on the list, the VOSA list for things to check, which was a bit surprising. So there are a lot of features on the list that you were given that are probably more relating to cars than they are to actual shuttle buses.
Okay, right. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. I'm aware that we're in the debate now, so we're
Yes.
obviously going to be starting to work
Well, yeah,
towards
that's
our
what I'm trying
decision.
to encourage. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to say that I've been aware of this kind of shuttle bus since the early 90s when I was being referred to what was going on in Malmö in Sweden, and it's a shuttle bus that's there, been functioning sort of just a little bus that I think it's called the local hopper or something. It's been going around there very successfully, a little electric bus. They were running them on big batteries that used to be in the back of milk wagons, milk wagons, and after that I actually had the opportunity to experience it at Johannesburg at the Earth Summit when they put them all in there, all made in Mexico at the time. And I think this, one of the things I've just reason I'm making that point is actually I think people love them. So I think it, potentially it'd be really welcomed, and as you say, the raised area so you can see better. And I think one way or another, we obviously, and I take on board, we need to make sure we've got all the dotted our I's and crossed our T's for this. But there's a lot of new sort of stuff coming in, and it's quite fast. So I think as long as we can condition this kind of what we think is slightly outstanding, just to make sure that's absolutely right, because obviously you're not going to get your funding that you're looking for and things like that anyway if you haven't got all of that in place. I would like to propose that we approve this application, because I just think it's brilliant to have, and I think I live in Totnes. I would hope that we would have stuff like this in Totnes and the other towns that are compromised at the moment and choking on fumes, when this is a really positive way forward. So
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Thomas, then Councillor Pannell.
Very happy to second what Councillor Hodgson has said, Chairman. Conditions ought to be certainly around the Isofix wheelchair positioning, around the front and rear cameras, and we ought to have a conversation with officers about the relevance of considering the need for side airbags or not. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm just aware that a slow-moving vehicle that's hit on the side by a faster-moving vehicle, and I guess that's the difference, that this is an exceedingly slow-moving vehicle, and I don't know what impact that might make. That isn't, I think probably that's more for the officers to give us a steer on whether that's relevant as a consideration.
Yeah, I think it is.
Just so you're aware, we are restricting the speed of the vehicle. If we weren't to put that restriction on ourselves, I think the maximum speed is 45 miles an hour.
Okay. I think the rest of what you say, I'll refer to the officers again in a second in terms of, depending on which way this is going in terms of possible conditions. But so I've had a proposal for to approve this application from Councillor Hodgson, which has been seconded by Councillor Thomas. Councillor Pannell, do you wish to?
Yeah, I'd support this, but I'm not sure whether technically it's going to be feasible to fit airbags to a vehicle that's already manufactured to a certain standard. I would imagine it's going to be very difficult to install those, but I would support a condition that the list of safety features is submitted to the officers, and we give conditional approval on the officers being satisfied that the list of safety factors are sufficient.
Thank you. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer to Naomi and David to see, in terms of conditioning this, is our condition something that we need to agree to as a committee now, or is it something that is better in terms of wording to be delegated to the chair and vice chair to proceed from that basis? David.
Drafting things by committee is always difficult, so some sort of delegation would be appropriate. I would suggest that the wording is something along the lines of that the Hackney Carriage vehicle licence be granted, subject to the provision of further safety details, such details to be approved by the licensing officer in consultation with the chairman and vice chairman.
That's fine by me. Okay, so I'll just say from my perspective, I think there's clearly a balancing act here because we're being asked to consider the Euro NCAP rating in relation to other safety features. I personally think this is a tremendous idea, but I'm conscious that I want to keep to the specific reason why we're here as opposed to that it's a lovely idea. I think that any concerns one might have regarding other safety elements, for me, is counterbalanced by the improvements that this vehicle could bring to Sulcombe, and in particular, potentially reducing traffic for the Sulcombe area, which I think is really important, and indeed doing it in a very sustainable way via an electric vehicle. So personally, I am very happy to support this proposal. That being said, Councillor Smurden.
Just check with Naomi. So if we grant the license, is this once it's granted, is that done, or do they have to renew?
We can only grant the license for a maximum of 12 months.
Right.
And then there's a yearly renewal. We wouldn't need to go through this process every year once the type of vehicle was approved. But every year the vehicle would have to be tested twice to make sure it's mechanically sound.
Right.
And we would be checking the insurance documentation, public liability every year. But we wouldn't have to go through this procedure every year.
Okay, so going back to the operator, so you're obviously, if this is granted, you're planning to start pretty much right away then, you know, so that you're running throughout this season. Right.
We did initially think that we could probably have it up and running for sometime the end of April, but being realistic, it's probably going to be June. Because we need to get everything in place. We need to make sure that everything's squeaky clean before we do.
Right. Okay. What I'm trying to get at is you know, I think it would be helpful to have a, you know, if it's got to be regranted, then possibly a review, because this is, you know, this is quite new, and it does have implications for other towns that if the committee, when it regrants the license, possibly reviews the performance, then, you know, as a learning exercise on both sides. You know, Mr. Fairbairn's probably going to tell me that there's no, you know, there's no provision for doing that.
I think, Councillor Smurden, the realistic thing here is that if a councillor or anybody else wishes to ask for this to be reviewed in 12 months' time, should it be accepted by the committee today, then it can do, can't it? Under our licensing policies.
Okay.
I would suggest if it's licensed and we had any complaints or issues, or like you said, a councillor had any concerns, then it's potentially we would bring it back to the committee when the renewal came up anyway, for that to be looked at. But if there weren't any concerns, we would probably not do that.
That's fine.
Okay, splendid. Right. With that all being said, we have a proposed and seconded in favour of approval. Just wait 1 second. Oh, yeah. Because we are delegating this, presumably we don't need to complete the templated decision notice now, do we?
No, that's correct, Chairman. Because I think the reason that you've made the decision you have is that you're satisfied on the evidence you've received today that the vehicle meets the objectives of providing safety and health of drivers and the public. It's a vehicle safety, comfort and access, and it encourages environmental sustainability. So those are the objectives set out in the report, and you're satisfied on the evidence you've heard today.
Okay.
That
All
those
right.
objectives are met.
In which case, on that note, I shall move to the vote. So it's been proposed and seconded in favour, with all that David said. So all those in favour, please. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. That application is approved subject to delegated approval subject to conditions, and a decision notice will then be issued to you by this authority. But gentlemen, thank you very much for coming, and bye. Thank you very much indeed. That brings us to the end of our formal business. So at that point, I'm going to ask members to stay behind for a minute or two afterwards. But with that, I don't think there's anything else that's on this agenda, is there, to be raised? So I shall at that point form.
Is this our last full meeting?
Well, it may or may not be. We're not quite sure, which is why I want to carry on saying what you would.
I'd just like to pass my appreciation, and hopefully that of our members for your.
Well, that's very kind of you indeed. All right. Splendid. Thank you very much. Okay. In which case.